Chapter 14. When Corey wasn't occupied with saving the road, he was tearing out the roosts in the chicken house. I wondered how I could serve him with what is known in his trade as a stop order. "Couldn't you leave a few of the roosts?" I asked. "There's just enough room for my machines, and why would we want roosts?" he retorted. "Well," I endeavored to explain, harboring the idea that if Corey's business went belly up, which it looked like it might, we could resort to raising poultry. I felt our chances for success were good. Both Arlo and the real estate salesman had informed us that the chicken house had been built for raising chickens scientifically. Besides, I had inherited a tendency toward fowl. According to my father, I was hatched on the little farm in Aloha, Oregon, on the same day as 1,000 baby chicks. And Corey had inherited the tendency too. His family had raised chickens in Norway. Corey, reading my mind, said sarcastically, "Every time I came out to use my table saw, I'd have to wait around while one of your hens laid an egg." He paused, as if to consider. "If you're going to have chickens, you'll have to keep them in the barn." There, he'd said it. I could have chickens, though keeping them in the barn, and here Corey meant the dark, damp basement, wouldn't be as exciting as raising them scientifically. "But you'd better wait till spring. We've got enough problems." Our plumbing problem was caused, no doubt, by water running down the front of our property like the wide Missouri River from the orchard above. Consequently, Corey was spending his time diverting water. I noticed his efforts benefited our neighbors as much as they did us. It kept the entrance to their driveway open. "Why doesn't Mr. B come out and help you?" I stormed, waving a plunger in the air. "If I had a phone, I'd call him up and give him a piece of my mind." Corey, once again sarcastic, retorted, "And if I had a phone, I would call up my crew and give them instructions. But as it is, I have no phone, so I have to go to town to give instructions." I felt properly chastised. He headed to the barn to load his truck. However, he was back in a few minutes to announce that his battery was flat. He called into the front room, "Sig, I need your help." Not surprisingly, it was Eric who appeared, wide-eyed and ready to meet the day. As usual, Sig, known in our household as the deepest sleeper in the world, was still sound asleep. I shrugged. I had already gone through my regular morning routine. Shake Sig, go put water in the percolator, go shake Sig, go put coffee in the basket, go shake Sig, go measure the oatmeal, go shake Sig. Corey didn't engage in that nonsense. He dragged Sig out of bed by his foot. Sig staggered into the kitchen, complaining that Freya was in the bathroom taking down her curlers. As if to confirm this, Freya walked in, dressed to the hilt. Every hair was in place. And lipstick. "Mom, the toilet is running over," I cut her off. "I know. You can blame Mr. Biastock for that." Corey addressed Sig. "Get dressed. I'm already late." That was not news. Corey was always late. He gave Sig instructions. "As soon as the truck hits the incline, I've got to jump in and get it started, and you have to get out of the way." I felt nervous as I watched them going out the door. Jump-starting always seemed like an accident waiting to happen. I realized that Corey knew what he was doing. The problem was, he seemed to think that everyone else knew as much as he did. I also knew that Sig had a lot of what my father called savvy, but he was still, after all, just an inexperienced kid. I should have considered right then that when Sig was not alert, he was not the best one for pushing trucks. I should have sent him back to bed, and Freya and I should have gone out to push the truck. Instead, I turned on the front burner of the stove and directed Freya to go to the refrigerator for eggs. I had just put on the frying pan and spooned in some butter when Eric came rushing through the door shouting, "Sig is getting killed!" I didn't stop to think. I just flew out the door with Freya following close behind. I could see that the back wheels of the truck were on the down incline, and Sig was pinned between the door of the truck and the upright beam of the doorpost. Corey, leaning his full weight against the tailgate, was desperately trying to push the truck forward. He yelled, "Get the keys to the car!" I turned and dashed to the house, praying desperately, "Oh God, where are the keys?" This was a common prayer around our house. No matter how hard we tried to keep a place for everything and everything in its place, more time was spent at our house searching for keys than in any other pursuit. The second I opened the door, I knew I had another problem on my hands. The frying pan was ablaze. My immediate impulse was to call the fire department, but then I remembered, oh God, we didn't have a phone. Eric dashed in. "Daddy says hurry, Sig can't breathe." To this day, I'm not sure how I put the fire out, or how Freya found the keys, but we did, and we returned to the desperate scene. At the thought of driving the car up the rickety old ramp and nudging the truck, I panicked. I had been involved in pushing cars too often. Corey must have noticed my panic and said, I'll drive the car. Freya, Eric, and I braced ourselves against the truck, and in a moment the car sputtered up the ramp. Just before contact, the three of us jumped aside, landing in the blackberries beside the ramp, while Sig, uttering a sound like a liberated animal, staggered down the driveway towards the house. I ran in and found Sig curled up on the sofa, moaning. I probed his chest. He flinched at the pain. I lifted his arm. He screamed. I needed to call a doctor. Then I realized I didn't have a phone to call a doctor. In the aftermath, my family always questioned, would I have called a doctor? I was never one to seek medical help unless someone was minus a limb or turning blue. Neither of these conditions existed, although Sig was very pale. Yet I felt a panic that I couldn't get help if one of these conditions suddenly arose. Next thing I knew, Jack Biastock was at the door. His first words were, "What stinks?" I didn't know whether he was referring to the eggs or to the toilet issue, so I ignored the question and asked him to run up to his house and call a doctor. He answered, "The doctor wouldn't be able to get through. That's why I came by, to give you the news." That was one thing I'd come to appreciate about Jack. He always brought us the neighborhood news. The road just washed out.